a problem for your law enforcement officers is, on one hand, very interested in trying to get the animal the care it needs as soon as possible. On the other hand, we have a need to collect evidence in situ so that we know what it looked like then and we can use it for a later prosecution. So I always encourage animal services officers and law enforcement to try to weigh that balance. My name is Sherry Hines. I'm a Deputy Chief Attorney for the Unified Government of Athens, Clarke County. There's a lot of challenges dealing with investigating crimes against animals. I would say it's most similar to investigating crimes involving young children. Certainly animals do try to communicate in different ways, but in the same way that, a toddler can't effectively tell you what happened to them, they may not even be able to speak at all, animals can't speak up on their behalf and they can't tell you what they've experienced.
Just like children, the elderly, and victims of domestic violence, they need special care when it comes to investigating and prosecuting. I'm Claudine Wilkins. I'm the founder of the Animal Protection Society. I'm a former prosecutor and generally an animal law expert. Animal protection laws have been here for a very long time. In fact, the first one we ever had was in the 1800s. They need protection, and the reason is they're voiceless victims.
You can't speak to your victim. You have to do this in a totally different manner. My name is Alan Barber. I am the Assistant Director for the Practicum and Animal Welfare Skills at the University of Georgia School of Law. I'm also a reserve officer with the Athens Clarke County Police Department. I'm getting all my information from third party, from animal control officers that are on scene, from other law enforcement officers that are on scene, from a vet report, and from pictures and maybe some videos, rather than being able to sit down with a victim and say, okay, can you tell me what happened?
The dog can't tell us, oh, I haven't eaten in 5 days. Oh, I haven't had water in the past 2 days. Oh, someone hit me, or I got ran over by a car, I broke a leg, or anything like that. We have to know what we're looking at and how to approach it. My name is Juan de Leon. I currently serve as the road supervisor for Athens, Clarke County.
We have to be asking questions about pets when we're investigating those types of crimes, which may lead us to additional victims, i.e. the animal in the home. When we are investigating allegations of animal abuse, we should also be asking about other potential human victims in the home, because we do see that correlation exist quite a bit. My name is Jessica Rock. I am the Georgia State Animal Crimes Resource Prosecutor at the Prosecuting Attorneys Council, and I am also a federal prosecutor who handles animal crimes in the Southern District of Georgia. One of the reasons why I think I stay so passionate about making sure that other prosecutors and law enforcement officers understand these types of cases and continue to investigate and prosecute them is because they don't really ever tend to exist by themselves. 20 years of doing this, and I will say that almost every single case that I have either worked myself or assisted other prosecutors or law enforcement with tends to be tied to other types of crimes.
So for example, one of the things that was very important to me was trying to encourage our code enforcement officers and our animal services officers to not only work with law enforcement when they see evidence of more serious crimes, or certainly state level crimes, but to work with each other, because so often those cases overlap. That code enforcement is being called out because of a dilapidated building. They see animals that are living inside in horrible conditions. Well, that needs to be a referral to animal services. But I think importantly, all of these different departments have reasons to go onto property to interact with people in a way that can hopefully help resolve various issues that they all may be facing. For instance, we had one very well-known property, at least from our office, that was a real challenge for code enforcement, for animal services, and for law enforcement. It was very clear that people were regularly selling drugs out of this house and one next to it. I actually pulled the 911 calls. In one particular year, this property averaged a call to 911, either from that house or about that house, every single week for an entire year. So that's how problematic this property was. And calls ranged from domestic violence to drugs to gunshots fired. We had people claiming that they were afraid to sleep at night in houses nearby because they thought they were going to be shot. And so that has been resolved. The tenants finally moved out. But I think it was a combination of law enforcement pressure as well as code enforcement dealing with the just structural issues with the property and animal services dealing with the animals that were not being taken care of that helped.
Because of the intersection between crimes against animals and other sorts of crimes, there's a range of enforcement officials who may be involved in investigations. A key challenge is identifying who has the authority to seek warrants and who has the expertise to investigate the animal-specific elements in a given jurisdiction.
I would say generally, I think it's poor. I think the unified government has done a really good job to try to build those bridges. But from everyone I've ever talked to that's doing this kind of work across Georgia, I would say that I think that departments commonly do not communicate well with each other and often maybe don't even know that communication would be helpful.
It was very apparent to me in 1996 when I was a prosecutor that no agency was talking to each other. Nobody knew what one hand was doing, than the other. What is also concerning to me is the fact that police officers are very much involved in animal cruelty investigations, but they don't know it. They assume if a call comes in and an animal is involved, they're going to push it off to animal control or Department of Ag, when in fact, they're the ones who need to be the lead investigator on the case.
There's still a long way to go. It really is just putting animal control out there, letting the police officers know who we are. I mean, we are a small agency, but having them know us. And so they feel comfortable reaching out if they do think that they've come across something that would fit some type of animal cruelty charge. This is extremely important just because we want to be a resource for the police department, just like we need the police department to be a resource for us.
So the Georgia Department of Agriculture is a regulatory agency under the executive branch of our government. However, we have a very unique Department of Agriculture. Under the Georgia Constitution, it is one of the only executive agencies that has the ability to have a law enforcement arm. Now, what's great about that is they're investigating now dogfighting and animal cruelty cases, as well as governing those who are licensed or should be licensed by the Department of Ag. And those are people like breeders or pet dealers. For example, if a pet breeder who has a license under the Department of Ag is violating a regulatory violation, they can be prosecuted through that regulatory agency, through an administrative law judge. If they're also violating a criminal law, they can simultaneously be charged with a crime and be prosecuted on the local level by a prosecutor through either law enforcement or animal control. I've been doing conferences since 1996, and the number one homework I give to every attendee is this: find out who you need to call in the agency that you will be working with. And every time I say that most cases involve at least law enforcement, that's police and sheriff, or both, and it will probably include an animal control officer. And in some cases, it will also now include the Department of Agriculture inspectors. So we have a unique state here, and that is the Georgia Department of Agriculture is involved with companion animals, but only to a specific degree.
And so that interagency cooperation, that interagency networking is big. It ends up allowing for the exchange of knowledge and how things are done in different areas so that Georgia can take what we found has worked here and potentially maybe take that over to the Carolinas or Tennessee or something else like that. And that, in my opinion, is how animal welfare in and of itself moves forward in a positive direction. It's up to the agencies to kind of really seek out and make partnerships with the other agencies that are involved in these cases.
Animal control officers working with law enforcement officers, working with prosecutors, having a veterinarian who understands what you need from the vet report. It's about everybody working together.
I always tell my officers, go out and meet your counterpart to the Department of Ag inspector. Find out who is in your region. Go have a cup of coffee with them, get to know them, get their cell numbers. And that way, when you know you have a case coming up and they may be involved, you've got their phone number. And always get their backup officer in case that person is off duty. And the same goes for police and back and forth between animal control and police. And also, every one of these agencies and agents should have the number of their local prosecutor, because oftentimes the prosecutor needs to get involved in the very beginning of a case. The Fourth Amendment places limitations on the government and the government agents. So government agents could be anything from law enforcement, sheriff, animal control, Department of Ag inspectors, and their staff and county attorneys. You have a right to privacy, okay? The Fourth Amendment provides that right. However, if there's probable cause, meaning there is a belief that a crime is happening or has happened, and there's a reasonableness to invade that privacy of you, and you're seeking evidence pertaining to that crime, then that's when a search warrant is applicable, and that invasion of your privacy is allowed, and the taking of your property is allowed. The seizing of property can include animals because they may be subject to the crime itself, whether it's an animal used in the operation of a crime or the animal was the actual instrumentality or object of a crime. Those animals, even though your property can be seized and your Fourth Amendment rights are not violated because it's part of the search warrant, those animals can be taken from you and now will be considered evidence in the criminal case.
But not every search requires a warrant. Officers often rely on exceptions like a knock and talk or consent is given, or the plain view doctrine when evidence is visible from a lawful vantage point. And in urgent cases, there's what's called exigent circumstances.
Sometimes there is not enough time for a search warrant, and there's a thing called exigent circumstances. And that is when we know that the animal is suffering so badly that acts have to be performed quickly. Those are exigent circumstances.
When officers can't rely on a warrantless search, they must obtain a warrant. This usually involves showing probable cause to a judge, and sometimes that case is built upon information from anonymous sources. The process is designed to add oversight while still allowing investigations to move forward. The Fourth Amendment also includes several key ideas that define its reach. Curtilage protects the area immediately around the home, while the postman's rule permits limited entry for those with a legal reason to approach. The open fields doctrine means land outside that protected area is generally not private, and plain view allows evidence to be seized if it's visible from a lawful vantage point. In animal cases, these rules can become even more complex. Questions often arise about how fences affect access when officers can seize a loose animal, or what to do with animals that are in danger or are themselves dangerous. Each situation requires balancing the law's protections with urgent concerns for safety and welfare.
And now to a courtroom in Paulding County brought to tears.
107 dogs in his yard.
Those are collars. Hundreds of dogs in various conditions, all taken.
The most recent case that we prosecuted, it was a dogfighting case in Paulding County. There were, I believe, 107 dogs that we seized from this individual. And not only was it 107 dogs, but you're talking about 107 dogfighting dogs, or dogs that are being possessed, bred, trained for the purpose of dogfighting. And so it took a major operation over several days to get each one of those dogs out of there safely, to get the law enforcement officers, the animal control officers, and everybody, the rescue organizations that were out on scene with us, to get all of them out of there safely. It takes people that know how to handle animals, what evidence needs to be collected, and how to safely do it.
First and foremost, we want to collect all the right evidence. And again, it depends on the facts, because if we're investigating, let's say, a dogfighting case, There's so many other pieces of evidence that we're going to ask you to look for. I want not only to collect the animals, but I want to collect the dog bowls, the housing, the chains, all the things that go involved into dog fighting. So there's so many different types of evidence you can take, but you absolutely want to take that in each of your cases.
Take as many pictures as you can, take as many videos as you can. You know, obviously you're not going to take an entire 10 by 10 pin unless you absolutely have to, but can I get pictures of that from every angle, from inside, from outside? The doghouse itself, are you going to take the doghouse? It's kind of impractical to take the doghouse unless it's absolutely necessary, but taking pictures of the outside, 360 all the way around, going inside. Sometimes you have to get a little dirty when it comes to animals with animal-related crimes, getting down and getting inside where the dog was living. And getting pictures of the inside, because there may be evidence in there. There may be feces that's in there that you need to be able to see. There may be other items that are in there. There may be teeth. There may be evidence of another dog that you didn't see. There's one dog, you talk to the neighbors, well, yeah, they had 2 dogs or they had 3 dogs at one point. And next thing you know, as you're going through, you go inside the doghouse or you go inside a kennel or you go inside a garage and you find one dog that's alive and then potentially, you know, the remains of another animal that if you didn't go through the process and you didn't go through everything, you would have totally missed it.
In animal cruelty cases, evidence can take many forms. Investigators should begin by photographing the animals themselves from every angle, as well as any wounds, food and water sources, and the condition of shelters or enclosures. Physical items like collars, tags, dogfighting equipment, medical supplies, and written records should all be collected. Objective details such as temperature, weight, and veterinary information need to be recorded, while digital sources like cell phones and social media can provide critical context. And, whenever possible, complete medical testing, including necropsies, x-rays, and broad blood panels should be ordered to build the strongest case.
I have paperwork. I have everything I'm going to use to document, again, my location, whatever the actual violations or charges might be. I want to make sure that I can document, articulate why I was there and why I took whatever I took or why I felt the need to pull the animal. I'm documenting the violation. I am, again, pictures, videos, they are saving grace. That's what we need. I can write the best report, but it's those pictures and videos that are actually going to sell the story. They're going to show why this person should be charged. And then from that point on, if I feel that it is actual animal cruelty and they need to be charged, I'm having the police respond with me as well. And so getting the evidence, I'm walking to the front door, I'm attempting to make contact, respecting everyone's Fourth Amendment rights. I can't just go into someone's house.
The case that comes to mind at the moment is actually an ordinance violation. And so this was a case where we knew there was drug activity. It was very clear from social media. But our handling of the matter was related to the animals being kept in very small cages, being bred irresponsibly, being left out on tethers where they had no access to shelter and water and things like that. We had a really good animal services officer who responded to that incident, and she ended up seizing the dogs because, again, they were outside with no water, no access to shelter on a tether. When she came out and seized the animals, what she did to make sure that she documented the evidence, because there were multiple dog houses and there were actually a couple different tethers, she took the tether and stood at its farthest point with her camera, very clearly holding the chain so it was seen on camera. And then she took sort of 360-degree photos showing where it extended on the mobile home, and then taking the next view showing where the doghouse was and where the water bowls were to show that there was just no possible way that the dog who had been tethered to this could have accessed any of those things. Again, not the most serious case, but it was a really good job of collecting evidence so that there was never a question or argument later about what condition the animal had been in.
In Paulding County, we identified each dog on scene with an evidence marker, took photographs of the dogs on scene where they were taken from initially. Then they were brought up to another location at the top of the driveway where we weighed the dogs. There was a veterinarian there to do a vet exam of the dog, and then we weighed the chain with the dog so we could show how heavy the chains were compared to the body weight of the dogs. They also got different angles, photographs of different angles of each dog with evidence markers. And so When it came time for trial, we were very easily able to match up where that dog came on scene with photographs of it, the vet exam being done of each dog, what the dog looked like from on scene through the end of the process, which we had photographs after the fact as well. So we were able to show the progression of what these dogs looked like on scene compared to what they looked like later on after they had received adequate vet care. At the conclusion of the case, the jury found him guilty on all 103 counts that were contained in the indictment. He was sentenced to 475 years in prison.
Veterinarians are extremely important in investigating crimes against animals just because their knowledge. Obviously, they went to school for it, but they can see things and they can run tests, they can do blood work, things that I can't necessarily do here, or maybe I just don't have the knowledge behind it. They can catch things that I may have missed or the shelter staff may have missed, and it's with their expert witness testimony. A lot of cases are won just because they had that knowledge. They had that person to sign off on, yes, this animal was mistreated, this is what happened, and this is the evidence to back it.
So I think veterinary reports generally are crucial, right? They're your expert witnesses, whether that's a local vet who has seen an animal that you seized that was starving or otherwise injured and suspected of having been cruelly mistreated, or whether that's a veterinary pathologist at UGA who did your necropsy. Those vets doing the necropsies are much more attuned to legal cases because a lot of times their work very much involves the court system. Your local vet in your jurisdiction may not have a lot of experience. So we often sort of joke about needing to meet with the veterinarians to just translate it for us. So that's a challenge, and making sure that you don't make assumptions about what the report says. It's really important you talk to your veterinarian to make sure that you understand it because they're commonly very confusing.
It's definitely important, and I tell prosecutors this, when you get these case files and you have a vet report, whether it's a necropsy outlining what the cause of death was or some other forensic report in your case from a veterinarian, it's really important to pick up the phone and call that veterinarian and say, what does this mean? It's really important to understand that before you go to indict your case or accuse your case, and i.e. formally charge your case, because we don't want to have a misconception about what a veterinarian is saying in a report.
That helps animal crime investigation and pressing charges, just because now we have something to go to the solicitor's office, the DA's office, and say, look, this is how the animal's been treated. We have an actual doctor walking us through. And while the shelter may be caring for the animal, that report that came from the vet is pivotal in that.
So our law says you do not have to prove intent on a misdemeanor state animal cruelty charge. You just have to prove there was an act or an omission of an unjustifiable suffering. So what is unjustifiable suffering? Well, we rather a veterinarian tell a jury that versus an animal control officer or a prosecutor.
I think one challenge that we've seen here is when you have a veterinarian who is uncomfortable making a statement about pain and suffering. Because a critical element in animal cruelty cases is often pain and suffering. It is literally in the statute. The prosecutor often will need to prove that the animal suffered or was in pain. But you have veterinarians who are scientists, and they're very objective and very focused on facts. So they can say this dog's temperature was this, it had this injury, it appeared alert. But they're often not comfortable making a statement about whether an animal was suffering or not.
The best thing a prosecutor can do is contact that veterinarian and say, look, these are the elements of the crime that I have to prove. And for example, in a misdemeanor case, I just have to prove that the person acted or omitted to act, which caused unjustifiable suffering. So in your exam of this animal, can you articulate to me how this suffering occurred? And if the veterinarian just flat out says, no, I can't, then you're gonna have to find a way to articulate that to the jury yourself or through some other expert or through some other witness. So you've gotta get that suffering in there somewhere because that's kind of an element that you have to prove.
I would say we've come a really long way in 20 years. It's definitely a positive movement forward. I think the more we train certain counties to work together on these cases, the more their eyes open to not just the animal crimes that are existing within their communities, but the human crimes that are also associated with them. So it just takes really plugging in the right people who are familiar with what is needed in these types of cases. And I'm happy to say that we have a number of those people around the state that after, decades of doing this, I am grateful to have communities and individuals of people who come together when we do have these large impound cases, these large scale cases where we need a lot of hands-on assistance to safely remove the animals from the property.
Animals, even though they're not human beings, they are living creatures that suffer. And I'd like to think that we are not a community that believes that the suffering of a living thing is appropriate.